Three settlements are very luxurious nowadays and are a real nice spot to live in Israel, as well as to walk around and see a lot of Israeli culture and old stuff.
The building of settlements in Israel is an ongoing project that has led to the spread of small colonies within the land. These colonies are host to hundreds of thousands of Israeli Jews, like Mr. Yuval, who is a resident of a settlement called Javad Za'if. Javad Za'if is one of the fastest growing settlements on the West Bank and is currently home to 12,000 settlers. Settlements like this usually function like small towns, hosting synagogues, medical centers, schools, and shopping stores. The monuments can be easily distinguished by the Israeli flag, which stands tall on the towers, and the barbed wires which sit atop its walls, clearly marking to the Palestinian citizens the end of the one territory and the beginning of another. These well-protected areas are scattered all over the land and have increased in both size and number, especially in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. According to the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas,
the occupying power also continues to undertake excavations that threaten our holy places, and its military checkpoints prevent our citizens from gaining access to their mosques and churches. It continues to besiege the holy city with a ring of settlements.
the building of settlements restricts the availability of valuable resources, such as land and water, to the Palestinians. It also prevents Palestinian communities from expanding, not vice versa. These colonies are strategically built and are connected by small roads. Many olive trees perish in the process of defining Palestinian-Israeli barriers. Israelis burn some of these trees, which are thousands of years old, and are passed on from one generation to the other. This tree, which is thought to be around 5,000 years old, stands threatened on the borders of Al-Walaja near Beit Lahem. The Israeli military demolished two 17-year-old wells in the Hashem ad-Daraj Hathalin region on December 14th last year.
70 سنة
لو في محامي ما انهار
70 سنة عمر هذا البير. كل البيار ما بوجعني زي البير هذا.
وين رايحين؟
هذا عمره 7
بدهم يخربوا هناك.
كله قديم كله قديم. يعني حديث.
The water was used to feed the villagers' sheep and goats. The water level has gone down since then, and bulldozers fill the land. President Obama presented a speech titled A New Beginning in June of 2009 in Cairo University in Egypt.
The United States does not accept the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlements. This construction violates previous agreements and undermines efforts to achieve peace. It is time for these settlements to stop.
Later in 2009, the debate between the U.S., Israel, and Palestine still continues as the parties remain in disagreement on where the issue of settlements should fall in peace talks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaks.
I think the issue of settlements is something that belongs to the final negotiations. It can't prejudge the negotiations. It can't be resolved before we even begin to talk about it.
Five international and Israeli activists were arrested during a peaceful protest held in Hebron against the building of settlements on the 14th of August. Protesters defied the law which bans any political protest involving over 10 people. The building and expansion of settlements is considered a violation of international law according to international community. The United Nations Resolution number 446 states that the policy and practices of Israel in establishing settlements in the Palestinian and other Arab territories occupied since 1967 have no legal validity and constitute a serious obstruction to achieving a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East. On the 18th of February of this year, the United Nations Security Council held a vote on whether to immediately halt the building of Israeli settlements. 14 out of the 15 members of the Security Council were against the resolution, while the United States, being one of the 5 permanent members on the Council, vetoed the resolution. U.S. Ambassador Susan E. Rice said,
"Our opposition to the resolution before this Council today should therefore not be misunderstood to mean we support settlement activity. On the contrary, we reject in the strongest terms the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlement activity."
Netanyahu has famously said in a speech addressing the UN Security Council last month,
The core of the conflict is not the settlements. The settlements are a result of the conflict. But the core of the conflict has always been, and unfortunately remains, the refusal of the Palestinians to recognize a Jewish state in any border.
Just 4 days later, on the 27th of September, Israel approved the construction of 1,100 new settlements along the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which further complicated the problem. Egypt's Foreign Minister Mohammed Kamel Amr condemned the action, claiming that it is a challenge to the international community, which considers the building of settlements illegal. Meanwhile, Britain's Foreign Secretary William Hague said settlement expansion was illegal, corroded trust, and undermined the basic principle of land for peace. Protesters have been gathering in Belém, in the city of Ramallah, every Friday since 2005, where they are constantly attacked with tear gas once they reach the annexation wall. On the 21st of October of this year, a fire broke out as the tear gas set nearby vegetation ablaze. The 23rd of September 2011 will be a day never to be forgotten. It is the day which 2 opposing leaders stood in front of the United Nations Security Council and argued for their countries to be recognized as independent states. These counterparts were Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel is the only self-proclaimed democracy in the Middle East. In order for it to be recognized as a Jewish state, it will become either a theocracy or an apartheid state. If the latter were to happen, then Israel's Arabs, which form 20% of the population, would have to be expelled. Moreover, Israel calls for the prevention of the United Nations Resolution number 194, which states that the General Assembly resolves that the refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return and for loss or of damage to property which, under principles of international law or in equity, should be made good by the governments or authorities responsible. The situation seems to be going nowhere for solving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Peace talks remain just talks as both sides continue to disagree over the most fundamental issues. The Palestinian point of view has been unburied for quite some time and is made clearer in a statement President Abbas said last year.
The Israeli government holds the full responsibility for the failure and the collapse of the negotiation if it continues settlement expansion.
On the other hand, Prime Minister Netanyahu made several conditions for any peace talks, saying in an interview with President Obama in May of this year,
I think for there to be peace, the Palestinians will have to accept some basic realities. The first is that while Israel is prepared to make generous compromises for peace, it cannot go back to the 1967 lines. The Palestinian refugee problem will have to be resolved in the context of a Palestinian state, but certainly not in the borders of Israel.
The situation will remain the same while the Security Council debates and discusses the outcome of both parties' requests. Regardless of the conclusion, one thing is for sure: the world will never be the same once the results are out.